Have you ever looked at a photo of your family smiling and realized you were the only one missing from the frame? Not because you were late, not because you were busy, but because they didn't want you there. That was me last Thanksgiving. And until that moment I thought loyalty meant staying, even when they made you feel like a stain on the family name. My name is Jessica. I'm 34. I run my own HVAC company in Portland. Nothing fancy, just years of hard work, late nights, and hands that built something real. But when my younger sister Claire decided that I wasn't good enough to meet her boyfriend's family, when my own mother agreed with her, something inside me cracked. This is not just a story about betrayal. It's about waking up to the truth that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who've been chipping away at you the longest. And how one click, just one quiet click, can end a decade of silent sacrifice. It was the night before Thanksgiving. I had just finished a long client job, the kind where your jacket smells like engine oil and your boots leave prints in the snow. The sky outside was turning dusky purple, and I remember thinking, this is going to be a good evening. I had picked up a bottle of wine, good wine, the kind with a real cork, and I was already planning whether I'd bring apple pie or mashed potatoes. Then the phone rang. It was Mom, and her voice, normally brisk and organized, was oddly shaky. "Jess, maybe don't come this year," she said. "Claire's boyfriend is bringing his parents. More traditional. She just wants things to feel formal." I thought I misheard her. "Wait. You don't want me at Thanksgiving?" My voice cracked. The steering wheel suddenly felt cold in my hands. No, of course your family," she said. "It's just your job, your look, the tools. Claire thinks you might give the wrong impression." I didn't say a word. I just listened to the sound of my own heartbeat thudding against the quiet hum of the car engine. Because in that moment I realized something. Being family only mattered when I stayed useful. But the second I stopped being shiny enough to show off, became disposable. Let me take you back to the moment it all truly began. Not the phone call. Not even the dinner I never got to attend. But the years before that. The ones where I paid my sister's Ivy League tuition, worked overtime so she never had to flip burgers, and still got told I was a bit too blue-collar for company dinners. This is the story of how I finally set down the weight I was never meant to carry, and walked away, not out of spite, but out of self-worth. The thing about being the reliable one in the family is that people start treating your reliability like a resource. Like hot water from a tap. Always there, always warm, never needing thanks. That night after I hung up with my mom, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even pour the wine I'd bought. I just sat on the couch in silence, my coat still on, holding my phone in both hands like it might offer an explanation. Didn't. A few hours later, my cousin Maddie sent me a message. She's always been a little more observant, a little more honest than the rest of our family. Her text said, "Hey Jess, thought you should know. Claire told everyone you embarrass her. She doesn't want her boyfriend's parents to know someone in the family works with their hands." That line, "worked with their hands," kept reading it over and over, like somehow if I read it enough times, it would stop meaning what I knew it meant. This is the same sister who once cried on the phone because she couldn't afford her rent in New York. I drove 3 hours in the snow to bring her a check. The same sister who hugged me on the porch one summer and called me her hero. But I guess heroes don't wear HVAC boots. Not when there are linen napkins on the Thanksgiving table. And the strangest part, nobody even asked where I was. Nobody saved me a seat. In that entire room of smiling faces, not one person thought to say, "Hey, where's Jessica?" Because here's a quiet truth I learned that night. Sometimes the moment you stop being useful is the moment you stop being family. People don't always love you. They love what you do for them. And when you stop doing, they disappear. It was a hard truth. One that sat in my chest like a stone the next morning, as I drank cold coffee alone and watched the sun climb through the blinds, like it was any other ordinary day. But what came next was the moment that shifted everything. Not a dramatic fight. Not even a phone call. Just a decision. A single, quiet decision. That would end 10 years of silent sacrifice in a single click. Let me tell you what happened next. When Claire got accepted into Columbia, I remember the way she screamed, running down the hallway, waving the acceptance letter like it was a golden ticket. She looked so alive in that moment. And I remember thinking, I'll do whatever it takes to keep that look on her face. I didn't go to college. I started working straight out of high school. While my classmates were moving into dorms, I was hauling HVAC units and fixing air ducts in basements that smelled like wet dust. So when Claire got in, it felt like a win for both of us. No one ever asked me to pay her tuition, but no one else offered either. And so I did. I worked overtime, skipped vacations, turned down Christmas bonuses so she'd have her rent covered. Every semester was over $18,000. And not once did I miss a deadline. I didn't expect a parade. I didn't need her to post about it online. I just thought maybe one day she'd look at me the way I always looked at her, with pride. But that's not how it went. I remember visiting her dorm during sophomore year. I had just come from a job site. My shirt was a little dusty, my hands still marked with the day's work. She pulled me aside quickly and whispered, "Can you change before we go out? Everyone here's in law or business school. It just looks kind of weird." I laughed it off, said it was no big deal, told her I'd wait outside while she got ready. But the truth, that night I cried the whole drive home. Because slowly, quietly, I was learning something I didn't want to believe. To the person I saw as my little sister, I had turned from a hero into an inconvenience. It wasn't just the job. It was who I reminded her of, where we came from, what she was trying so hard to outgrow. And maybe that's the hardest part about giving with your whole heart, is realizing that to some people, you were only ever a stepping stone. But here's the lesson I wish someone had told me back then. You can't buy love with sacrifice. You can't earn respect by disappearing into the background. 'Cause eventually, you'll find yourself holding up a house that no one even admits you built. And that's exactly what I realized the morning I opened my laptop and saw the next tuition bill. $18,740 due in 14 days. This time, I didn't sigh. I didn't reach for my wallet. This time, I reached for something else entirely. My boundary. Let me show you what that looked like. The tuition portal had always been a place of routine for me. Log in. Log out. It had become so automatic over the years. I don't even think I looked at the number anymore. It didn't matter whether it was $6,000 for summer classes or $18,740 for a full semester. Claire needed it, I made it happen. But that morning was different. Something in me had finally quieted. Or maybe it had finally awakened. I sat at my desk with a warm mug of chamomile tea, the steam curling around my fingertips as if offering a gentle kind of courage. And when the Columbia University login page loaded, I didn't feel dread. I didn't feel guilt. Felt still. There it was. Spring term balance. $18,740. Payment due in 14 days. But for the first time ever, I didn't reach for my credit card. Instead, I moved my mouse to the corner of the screen, to that quiet little button I had never clicked before. Remove payment method. A small window popped up. Are you sure you want to remove this payment method? This action cannot be undone. I hovered over the confirm button, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember the moment I chose myself. And then click. No fireworks, no thunder, just a soft sound from my laptop speaker. But to me, it felt like the walls finally stopped closing in. And that's the thing people don't tell you about setting boundaries. It's not a scream, it's a whisper, not a storm, just a click. A small act that says, I love you, but not more than I respect myself. That afternoon I went right back to work. Checked on a rooftop HVAC unit. Greeted my crew, and for the first time in weeks, felt lighter. Of course, the silence didn't last. Because when someone's used to feeding off your sacrifice, they don't take your no as an answer. They take it as a betrayal. And sure enough, the calls came fast. The messages even faster. But I was ready. Let me show you what happened when guilt came knocking. And I refused to open the door. It didn't take long. Less than 10 minutes after I clicked remove, my phone began buzzing like a wasp trapped in a jar. First it was Mom, then Claire, then a string of unknown numbers I didn't recognize but knew exactly who they were from. By lunch I had 10 missed calls and 14 messages. And they all sounded exactly the same. You can't do this. She's your sister. Don't let her lose everything. They didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't ask why I made that choice. They just assumed I owed them an explanation and a check. That's the thing about guilt. It never shows up looking like the villain. It wears your mom's voice, your sister's tears, your family's tired, disappointed sighs. Mom called again that evening. I finally answered. Her voice was shaking, part concern, part controlled anger. Jessica, do you know how panicked Claire is right now? I stayed calm. Kept my eyes on the road as I drove back from a service call. Yes, I said. And maybe she should be. She gasped like I'd just committed a crime against nature. She's in her final year. What if she gets kicked out? I laughed short and hollow. She's old enough to understand consequences, Mom. She's not a child. There was silence. Then that familiar shift in tone. The one every child of guilt knows all too well. Heavy. Weighted with disappointment. You're the only one in this family who can help her. Are you really going to turn your back on your own blood? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Family, I said slowly, doesn't shut you out of dinner because of your job. It doesn't erase you when you're not convenient. I'm not an ATM, Mom. I'm a person. There was another long pause. Then she said the thing she always says when I don't fold. You've changed. And this time, smiled. No, Mom. I've just finally started living as myself. Hung up. Not out of spite, but out of peace. Because here's the truth. When you stop being easy to use, people call you difficult. When you stop giving blindly, they call you cold. But setting boundaries is not cruelty, it's clarity. Still, I knew this was far from over. Because the house of cards Claire had built was starting to tremble. And what came next was the first piece to fall. But before I take you there, let me ask you something. Before I take you deeper into what happened next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been made to feel like your worth was only tied to what you could give? Have you ever been guilted into staying silent, just to keep the peace? If this part of my story hit close to home, I'd really love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. Whether it's a memory, a feeling, or just one word. Sometimes speaking up is the first step to healing. You're not alone. 3 days after I stopped answering calls, my cousin Maddie called again, this time with a voice that was equal parts stunned and hesitant. Jess, have you heard? Heard what? I asked, already feeling that tightening in my chest. Claire. She showed up at Mason's place this morning, crying. He broke up with her. I stopped what I was doing. The noise of the office, the quiet hum of printers, the click of a keyboard, suddenly disappeared. Mason was Claire's boyfriend. The one she was trying so hard to impress. The reason she told Mom I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving. He found out, Jess, about the tuition. She told him their parents were covering everything. He didn't know it was you. I didn't say anything. I just sat there. Not with joy, not with satisfaction, but with a kind of heartbreak that's hard to name. Because I realized Claire hadn't just erased me. She'd replaced me. In the story she told Mason, I didn't exist. She had created a version of her life. Clean, polished, curated for perfection. And I didn't fit the picture. Maddie continued, her voice low. Mason said he felt like he was in a 2-year-long play. And suddenly realized the main character had been acting the whole time. It was all crashing down now. The curated image, the half-truths, the perfectly folded napkins at family dinners. And what hit me hardest? It wasn't that Mason found out the truth. It was that no one, not even Claire, ever expected I would finally stop. She thought I'd keep paying no matter what. Keep giving no matter how invisible she made me feel. But here's the thing about building a lie. When it's stacked on someone else's silence, the moment that silence ends, everything collapses. And suddenly, Claire was no longer the perfect girlfriend from a perfectly respectable family. She was a woman caught in the wreckage of her own story. That night, I received an official email from Columbia Student Services. Primary payment method removed. Please update to avoid withdrawal. I didn't forward it. Didn't warn her. Didn't call mom. I just read it. And for the first time, felt nothing. Because when someone spends years pretending you don't exist, you eventually learn how to stop showing up. But Claire wasn't done pretending. Not yet. And what happened next? Well, let's just say she brought the drama right to my doorstep. It was a quiet Monday morning. The kind where everyone's sipping coffee a little slower, replying to emails, and settling into the rhythm of a new week. I was in a meeting with my tech team, reviewing specs for a new coastal hotel contract, when the front glass door of our office swung open so hard, the security chime gave a warning beep. And there she was, Claire. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, hair pulled back in a panic, heels caked in mud. She looked like a tornado that hadn't finished spinning. Her voice echoed across the room. I need to talk to my sister. Every eye in the room turned to me. No one said a word. I stood up slowly, smoothing my blazer, and walked toward her. Calm, composed, every step deliberate. This is a place of business, Claire, I said, my voice low but steady. You don't get to barge in here and cause a scene. You're ruining my life, she shouted, her hands shaking. You can't just cut me off like I meant nothing. I could feel my team behind me, silent, unsure whether to stay or step in. But I didn't need help. For years, Claire had been the storm, and I had always just tried to stay dry. But not anymore. You didn't mean nothing, Claire, I replied. But you treated me like I did. I was never your shame, until you needed a clean story. Security was already moving toward her when she snapped back. Don't touch me. I'm the sister of the woman who runs this place. And that's when I said the line I had waited my whole life to believe. No. You're the sister of the woman who runs this place. You don't run anything here. And you don't get to show up only when your fantasy life breaks down. Pause. The room stayed silent. Even the hum of the air conditioner felt like it was holding its breath. Then came her last desperate cry. You're abandoning me. But this time no one flinched. No one defended her. No one rushed in to make it okay. Security gently guided her out. Her footsteps heavy. Her voice trailing into silence. And that's the thing about finally standing your ground. The people who once called you cruel are usually the ones who never respected your boundaries to begin with. I went back to the meeting, picked up my notes, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't shrinking. I was free. But of course, freedom has a price. And in families like mine, it usually comes with one final phone call. Let me tell you what happened when Mom called next. A few weeks passed after that scene at the office. By then, the dust had started to settle, at least on the outside. Mom had called again. Same script, same disappointment. You humiliated your sister. She's devastated. You've changed. And I gave her the same quiet truth. No, Mom. I just stopped letting guilt decide who I am. But even after standing my ground, there were still moments, quiet, hollow ones, when I sat alone on the couch and wondered, did anyone ever really see me? Not the version of me that pays tuition or fixes boilers, but just me. Then one rainy afternoon in January, a small cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. Handwritten, slanted letters I hadn't seen in years. It was from my grandmother, Evelyn Calloway. She lived 3 hours away in Salem. in a cozy house with wildflowers in the backyard, and a cat that always slept on the windowsill. We hadn't spoken much since Grandpa passed. She wasn't on Facebook, didn't do FaceTime, but she had always somehow known more than she let on. I opened the envelope carefully, and inside was a single-page letter in her soft, careful handwriting. My dearest Jessica, I don't know the full story, but I know you, and when a woman like you sets a boundary, many people will feel uncomfortable. Don't let that stop you. You've given more than anyone ever asked of you. Who among them sacrificed for you the way you did for them? Not one. And yet you kept giving. I'm proud of you, not because of the money you make, or the contracts you sign, but because you've finally learned to protect your own heart. I must have read that letter 3 times, not because it was long, but because it filled something in me I didn't realize had gone so empty. While the rest of the family whispered blame, while they painted me as the villain for choosing myself, they saw me, not as a disappointment, not as a traitor, but as a woman who finally chose wholeness over approval. And sometimes that's all we need. Just one person who reminds us, you are not wrong for choosing peace. That letter didn't erase the hurt, but it reminded me that not all love is loud. Some love arrives gently, in a plain envelope, with no expectations, just belief. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. But the story doesn't end with a letter, because what I did next changed not just my life, but the future I thought I'd never have. Let me show you what happened when I took all the energy I used to pour into others and finally started building something just for me. After years of being the helper, the giver, the reliable one, something beautiful happened when I finally stepped back. I began to see what I could build when I wasn't carrying everyone else. With the money I used to spend on Claire's tuition, I expanded my HVAC company, hired 2 new certified techs, good people hardworking like me. We upgraded to newer equipment, redesigned the office with clean neutrals and soft lighting, and accepted a 3-year maintenance contract with a chain of cafes in the Pearl District. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. And the best part, nobody here cared that I didn't wear heels or have a law degree. Nobody asked when I'd switched to a real job. Nobody winced when I said I owned a technical crew. Instead, I heard things like, "Thank you for showing up. We couldn't have done this without you. You're the reason this place works." For the first time in my life, I felt seen. Not for what I could give away, but for what I had quietly built with my own 2 hands. And I started to understand something I wish I'd learned years ago. Family isn't just who shares your last name. It's who shares your values. It's the people who clap when you win, stand beside you when you're unsure, and never ever ask you to shrink. I began to find family in the most unexpected places. In Maddie, who always texted to check in without asking for anything. In my crew, who never made me feel less than for showing up in dusty boots. Even in Grandma Evelyn's quiet, unwavering support. And in myself, the version of me who no longer needed permission to feel proud, or space at a table where I was never really welcome. Because here's the truth. Belonging is not about being invited. It's about creating a space where you no longer need to beg for acceptance. That winter on Christmas Eve, I wrapped myself in a moss green sweater after a long day on the job, poured a glass of white wine, watched the lights blinking outside my apartment window, and for the first time ever, I didn't feel empty. I didn't miss the noise, the fake smiles, the forced dinners. I had found something quieter, more lasting. But just when I thought the chapter had closed, a new one began, with a letter, a memory, and the final lesson I needed to learn, before I could let it all go for good. Let me take you there. The first cold rains of January had settled over Portland. Gray skies, soft puddles on the sidewalk, the kind of days that ask you to slow down. I was sitting at my desk, sorting through maintenance schedules, when another envelope arrived. Simple, handwritten. From Grandma Evelyn again. Inside was just a single line. I hope you know, sweetheart, choosing yourself isn't betrayal. It's bravery. I held that letter to my chest for a long time, because for years I had been trained to believe that loving myself came second, that being a good daughter, a good sister, a good woman, meant sacrifice without question, silence without resentment. But that kind of love, the kind that erases you, isn't love. It's performance. And when you stop playing the part, people call you selfish. Here's what I've come to believe. Self-worth is not earned by being last on your own list. And saying no to being used is not the same as saying, I don't love you. Just means the love you give now includes you. I used to think setting boundaries made me cold. But now I see. It's what finally made me warm. Warm enough to show up to my own life. Warm enough to build something real. Warm enough to sit in silence on Christmas Eve. And not feel lonely, just whole. I don't expect Claire to come back with an apology. I don't expect Mom to admit where things went wrong. And that's okay. Because I've stopped waiting for people to change. In order to give myself permission to live. And if you're listening right now, wondering if it's too late to choose yourself, to take one step toward peace, let me tell you something from someone who waited too long. You are not here to be a backdrop in someone else's story. You are not too much. You are not a shame. You are not a wallet or a second chance or a fallback plan. You are a whole person. And you have the right to take up space in your own life. Thank you so much for staying with me through this story. It wasn't an easy one to tell. But sometimes the hardest stories are the ones we need to hear the most. Because here's the truth. Love without respect is not love. Family without support is just a title. And silence in the face of mistreatment is not strength. Jessica's journey reminds us that it's okay to draw the line. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, this is where I stop giving and start healing. Now I'd love to hear from you. What part of Jessica's story stayed with you the most? How did it make you feel? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you never miss the next story that just might speak to your heart. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, you are not here to be anyone's shame.